I don't think that works either. Good evening. We will call to order the May 2nd City Council meeting. First action on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for attending tonight. The first action on the agenda, our next item, is a Lifesaver Award. I'll read a memo here. On March 14th, 2022, Sergeant Paramedic Joseph Garcia responded to an EMS call of chest pain while off duty as a paramedic. At the scene, Sergeant Garcia was able to diagnose a heart attack and called for air care to respond to the Breezy Point Airport. North Ambulance arrived and the patient was loaded for transport. While in the ambulance, the patient went into cardiac arrest and Sergeant Garcia began CPR. The patient was defibrillated and a pulse was restored. Upon loading the patient into the helicopter, the patient again went into cardiac arrest and was defibrillated successfully a second time. The patient was transported by air care to St. Cloud Catheterization Lab. The patient received a stent to clear the blockage and survive the medical emergency thanks to the great partnership with North Memorial. Chief, would you like to fill us in more on this one?
Yes, I would. This is a perfect example of how the City of Breezy Point's partnership with North Memorial Ambulance Service and our paramedic program helps to save lives. Sergeant Garcia was on scene prior to ambulance arrival, and with his equipment, his heart monitor, he was able to diagnose the heart attack, call for air care before the ambulance was on scene, so they were en route to our airport for transport to the St. Cloud Catheterization Lab. Had it been a circumstance where a paramedic was not involved, there would have been a lot more delay, as in we would have had to wait for an ambulance to arrive to diagnose a heart attack to give the patient a ride. So at this time, I would like to recognize Kevin Lee, manager of North Memorial, and first responder, Zone 3 first responder Ryan Franz, if you'd stand up for me, please, Ryan. He's also a sergeant in Pequot Lakes and a paramedic for Cuyuna. So the patient had two paramedics on scene prior to ambulance arrival. The patient, Bill Anderson, is seated to my left. He's here with us today because of their efforts and our paramedic program. So I'd like to allow Bill an opportunity to say anything he'd like to.
Biggest thing I'd like to say is thanks to Joe and Ryan and the other people who came and helped me, the ambulance crew and the helicopter crew. Without their prompt attention and everything, I wouldn't be here today. So I'm very grateful, and so is my wife.
We're grateful as well. Sergeant Garcia, if you'd please come forward.
Yep. Thank you again, everybody, and for the first responders, North, Mr. Garcia. Next agenda item is a request for City Council to consider the use of City Hall tables and chairs in city streets to block off the road event during an event on May 7th. We do have the requester here, Mr. Muller. Would you like to speak on anything on this? Please come to the podium and state your name.
My name is Clifford Muller, 30360 Airport Road, the airport manager of Breezy Point Airport. And honorable council members, we have arrived again at another day of summer, Saturday. So we're grateful for North Memorial to share our airport with them and all that they do. And we have, last year we had 87 aircraft. We're expecting a little more this year if the weather holds. And we had 82 classic cars last year, and the president of the car club said there'll probably be over 100. So we'll need the street, half the street if we can, and parallel park them on one lane.
Okay.
And then if I can get the tables and chairs again. And we fed 1,100 people last year, and we're hoping for that many this year or more. And I'd love to have everybody come and say, you know, visit with the helicopter pilots and what they do, and emergencies, fire trucks, etc. It's a aviation social, really, but it's a great place to share our community events. So we can meet the neighbors and have some food. There's no charge, free will donation, so we can afford to have families do that. We've had a lot of response on Facebook for people coming, so that's good. And thanks again to the city for your help. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.
There is a request. I would appreciate a motion to entertain this request.
So moved,
Second.
Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to make a comment at the end of it.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor and a second discussion.
I'll be brief. One thing you forgot, Cliff, is the new airplane that you're hiding in the hangar. I think that's important, and that's a surprise to everybody. So I would encourage all of you, bring your children and your grandchildren. This is something else to see. With all the airplanes, is the flyby going to happen?
Yes, we have 4 military possibles. We have a B-25 bomber at 1 o'clock, make a low pass.
Good.
And we've got a P-51 Mustang that's coming out of Flying Cloud, a Marauder out of Bemidji, and a possible Corsair.
Well, I don't want to steal your thunder, but that's out in the open, and you people need to be there because it's a real show, no cost, okay?
And we also have that C-131 is a first side door gunner from Vietnam.
Now we're talking airplanes. We could go on forever. Last thing to mention, and I know the police officer Garcia. This is his second or third, is it not, Chief of Life-Saving? He's been up there before.
I don't know the exact number, but it's multiple.
He's been there before.
Correct.
And the point I'd like to make as liaison to the airport for many, many years and working with this gentleman, it's because of the airport that North Ambulance has a good place to land. So it's important to this city. Thank you.
All right. Any other further discussion, Ms. Ball?
No.
Mr. Lilley?
This is one of the things that Cliff does guarantee us is that the day will be absolutely perfect. And I just checked the weather, and it's going to be perfect.
70 and sunny.
There we go. Well, there's a motion. There's a second. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right. Motion is granted. All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. What we have on the consent agenda is the council minutes from April 4th, 2022. Approval of claims totaling $223,571.54. Approve purchase of Life Pack carrying cases and batteries. Approve ARPA resolution. Approve selling tanker excess equipment. Approve seeking bids to replace decks at City Hall. Approve rebidding of sewer plant cold storage building. And approve seeking applicants for open city committees. Do I I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Discussion? Mr. Brocken?
None.
Ms. Ball?
Just items F and G, just to remove from the consent agenda, just to make some minor edits in the bids for dates. Couple date typos,
Okay.
nothing big.
So there's a couple typos on the consent agenda for dates. And so that was F and G.
Yes.
Mr. Bakken, you made the motion. Would you approve removing those items and moving those down to administrator and staff reports? We'll put that on before approved tax so we can correct those dates.
In the interest of brevity, yes.
Okay. Mr. Lilly?
Yes.
Okay. So F and G are going to be removed down to the first action item for number 7. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved with the exception of F and G at this time. At this time, we will open forum. If you would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda, you can do so at this time. I do ask that you come up to the podium, state your name, address. If you can, please limit to 3 to 5 minutes. If you are here for anything within Section 7, I will certainly call for public input at that point as well. So anybody wishing to speak for open forum, please address the podium. Mr. Jensen?
Steve Jensen, 29668 Shoreview Lane, Unit 905. I'm here this evening to make a formal request to the City of Breezy Point that for the June 2022 council meeting, on the agenda, the proposed short-term rental license is added. And their council discuss where are we at, what are the time frames, is it going to be rewritten? Do we need to, the discussion on enforcement? Councilmember Lillahei last time gave a heartfelt response. I fully understand the situation there. But this was a very high-profile thing last year. I mean, you had 3 public hearings, all the input from residents, the city administrator's time compiling all that data. And this needs to get on the agenda and get it moving forward or decide what you're going to do. That being said, in the echo after last month's council meeting, there was an article. It pretty much, a lot of it centered around the disc golf course expansion. But the part that struck me was Councilmember Maroney and Ball. You were going to take on communication to residents, at least that's what it said in the paper, or look at ways to improve it. I think this is a situation where there has been no communication. You can't have that much, all those public hearings and that much effort put into it without acknowledging where the city's at. Again, I understand the situation, but there's other council members that can assist. I mean, I've had a personal tragedy 2.5 years ago. I fully understand the stresses it cause and the impact, but things need to move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to come forward for open forum? Yes.
Bill Toft, 31877 Green Scene. And before I start, I want to thank all you people for sitting in those chairs. I know it can be thankless, and I know you get it from all ends sometimes. And I may not like some of the decisions that you folks make, but I respect the process and respect that you folks are sitting in those chairs. A month ago, me and several of the residents stood up here, and we had some concerns about the disc golf course expansion. We didn't see the public good in it. We had really a couple major concerns. One of the concerns was that I've walked on there many times and smelled marijuana coming through the trees. I know there's been alcohol being drank down there, and the response was that, well, it's a city park, so it's not possible that that's happened. I walked through the disc golf course on April 20th. Just 2 garbage cans is what I walked through. Walked by, and you can see that there's beer empties, wine cooler empties, and shot bottles. I'm just turn this for the camera. That were in just the 2 garbages I went by. The reason I was walking in the disc golf course, because noise was another concern, and I wish the mayor was here, because he had mentioned that he lives pretty close to the golf course, and that he only hears conversation once in a while, and it's not an issue for him. And I thought, well, I wonder how far he lives from it. So I went there to laser the closest part from that golf course to his house, and it's 74 yards. Now, that's 3/4 of a football field. This is the bottom of my property. You can see the end, and the new disc golf expansion goes right to the end. And I know it does for several of the residents also that this golf course is being expanded into. Mr. Lillyhigh, I don't want to pick on you, and I know that I emailed you about getting empirical data about your
Yes.
statement about thousands of dollars being spent by people that come and play disc golf. I haven't got that yet. I know you know that.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been somewhat preoccupied.
Yep, that's, like I said, I respect the process. I did call several people that I know that own businesses and restaurants and servers. There isn't one time they can recall that a disc golfer came in to buy a meal or buy a drink in these places. The demographics just does not support that they are going to spend money in the area. Mr. Humphrey, I wish he was here. Mr. Humphrey had stated that the economic benefit that we're going to see in Breezy Point is very similar to Clearwater. They have a beautiful disc golf course up there. It's a tournament that he said 1,700 people show up. The hotels are booked solid. It's a wonderful thing for the community. The only problem is that used to be a golf course, converted to a disc golf course, and it's privately owned. There's not 1 cent of tax dollars that went to build it or to maintain it. And it's not any residential houses that I can see on the video that they have on their website. It's not like it's being plopped down like it is in our case, right in the middle of a residential area. Also, Mr. Humphrey stated he was going to get $850 to sponsor holes. He thought that would be a good way to raise income. I talked to some business owners and some managers, and there isn't one that would be willing to pay $850 that I spoke to. In fact, they basically indicated there was no economic benefit to them to do so. What's the point in all this for me and for all us residents is that I just think there's been a lot of inaccuracies and a lot of assumptions made about the due diligence as this was brought to the council. And I personally would like to see one of 2 things happen. I obviously like to have it shut down immediately, and I don't know if that's going to be possible, but I think further study in this would be at least called for the bare minimum that should be done to see what the economic benefit is. I don't see how it's going to be possible to have an economic benefit to this. The behavior that I spoke about, there's going to be 5 and 6 times more people if this goes through. They're going to be drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana. There's no golf ranger that drives around to maintain order like there is in a regular golf course. And our police force is the finest, I think, in the state. And you can't expect them to be sending an officer down there to patrol for those kinds of infractions. I guess what I would, and I checked with the Crow Wing Election Board today, and there is a way for you folks to put this on the ballot this November. Let the taxpayers decide. Let the people that are going to be paying the bill for this actually vote. I will accept the vote, and I know all the residents that I've spoken to will accept the vote, and I think that's a democratic process at its finest. And I know it would take a courageous vote on all your part to do this. I hope you do the right thing. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Toth. Anybody next for open forum? Seeing nobody raising their hand or approaching the podium, we will close open forum. Next on the agenda item is mayor and city council reports. The mayor is unfortunately not here tonight, so city council members, planning commission, Mr. Lilhigh.
Well, obviously, the Planning Commission had some discussion and a vote on approving the conditional use permit for the Ashdown School. So I won't go into detail on that because obviously we're going to have a lot on this. Their other item of business was to discuss the use of the pods, the portable on-demand storage, and basically the decision on that was to leave our ordinance alone.
Okay. Thank you. Park Committee, Mr. Bakken? Any updates?
Several. Thank you for the floor. I'm not going to get into a debate with the gentleman that was just here. I respect what he had to say. I've been involved in this now for 8 years. This has been on the agenda, as was testified to last council meeting. Now we're back again to this. I think I can only speak my opinion. Shane Humphrey is well qualified for his position in an advisory capacity to that golf course. Well qualified. And I have looked and talked with him privately at his projections. And I, for one, believe it's a fact. I'm not going to debate anymore with the locals. I all know them well. Every single one of them. I will not debate that. Moving on to the cemetery.
Yes, you would have the floor for that next.
I do. There were 2 new elected. Sandy Logelin, if I'm pronouncing the name rightly, has formed a committee, the Community Sustainability Group. Sounds pretty smart. It's a group of 25 plus women who came to the the cemetery committee and presented their Parks and Rec and the Cemetery Commission. And the Cemetery Commission, folks, needs volunteers. I was involved in building that cemetery. And we begged, borrowed, and stole, and it's one of the finest cemeteries in the state of Minnesota. From the Cemetery Minnesota Association. That said, they have offered to partner with Cemetery Commission. They want a garden, community garden. I've heard that for years here, and it hasn't been done. They're not asking for a whole lot of space, something smaller than an acre. And certainly, I believe, as the liaison and the one who helped build that cemetery, I believe it could be governed appropriately. And that's what we've charged them with. You bring back a plan to us, and perhaps it'll work. Not till next year. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Balkin. I do have one item that I would actually add in there is for the road committee. If you recall, we had a speed request for a study on Shoreview. We have a new speed sign. This is one that can actually track traffic counts, speeds, and report back data. That is now up and operational on Shoreview. So that is finally something that we got in, and we're going to be monitoring that over the next number of weeks. So that is up to date. All right. Next on the agenda is number 7. And again, as we talked, the consent agenda items, F and G, we're going to move that to the beginning here. So our letter F is approve seeking bids to replace decks at City Hall. And I believe Ms. Ball had that requested off due to the fact that on page 20, if you go on the packet, it says a bid will be accepted on or before May 2nd, 2022. I believe that's just a typo. Do we want to correct that date? Is that through June 2nd,
June 6th, I think.
June 6th? I don't know if that's Joe or David.
Yeah, yeah, June 6th would be the appropriate date. It was meant for the previous meeting, and the dates then all get corrected.
Okay, understood. So with that correction, do I have a motion to accept letter F as amended?
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion passes. The second item that was removed from the consent agenda item is item G. And I believe on page 24, again, a very similar situation. Bids will be open in public at 10:01 on April 1st. Again, is this June 6th? June 6th. So we're asking for an amending this memo for June 6th for the bids opening. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
I have a motion on the floor. A second?
second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. The next thing, officially, 7A. As a new city administrator, I would introduce David Chansky, who is sitting back. As we know, Patrick Russo has moved on. So David, if you want to just introduce yourself real quick and move into 7A.
So let's introduce myself to, obviously, the residents of Breezy Point. David Chansky, excited to be here, excited to take on this role and help the council and the staff kind of take Breezy into the future and just keep the good things going. So with that, Councilmember Maroney, what we're looking for this evening, this is just the general request from Crow Wing County for the city of Breezy Point to identify the attached parcels in the packet as non-conservation. As staff, we have reviewed them, and we are recommending that they be designated as non-conservation and to be put on a future county land sale.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions of staff?
No, sir.
Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So moved to make these lots as non-conservation with a second. Any further discussion, Ms. Ball?
No.
Mr. Buchan, Mr. Lilley?
Nope.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 7B, approve advertising for Assistant City Administrator position. Mr. Chansky?
Thank you, Councilmember Maroney. As part of the 2022 budget, the City Council budgeted for a new position to act as an Assistant City Administrator. As you can see, again, as part of this budget process, the position was given a wage grid on wage 10, with intention of these wages to be allocated 50% to administration, 33% to planning and zoning, and 10% to sewer. This position was budgeted for about 75%, with the intent was originally to be higher on April 1st of 2022. However, again, with Administrator Wusso's resignation, the decision was to wait until the new administrator was in before moving forward with that position. I am currently in the process of kind of getting my feet wet and figuring out what a good job description is of this. However, so what we're asking kind of for tonight is for the council to authorize staff to begin the advertising and hiring process for the assistant and city administrator position as soon as a job description is created and we're ready to move forward with that. I would work with the personnel committee on that job description, finalizing that, and the intent would also to involve the personnel committee in the hiring process as well. And with that, I'll take any questions that the council has.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff?
None.
No.
Motion
Motion?
to approve with a discussion on my part later.
Understood. I have a motion on the floor. Any second?
Second.
I was gonna say, Rebecca seconded it.
Rebecca seconded. All right, further discussion. Mr.
Yes,
Buchan?
just briefly. A year ago, this May, I met with Mr. Wusso, the administrator, and we talked extensively about exactly what has come to fruition here. It's needed. I can testify that the administrator last year spent 30% of his time doing the planner's work. That's a fact. And he's, and much to my surprise, he had already looked into the future, to his credit, and told me about hiring this individual. And I'm 100% happy about that. I just wanted that entered into the record.
Thank you. Ms. Ball, any further? No. No? Mr. Lillhei?
No, this is, like Gary has said, is that this has been discussed for quite a while. The need is there, and one of the reasons that Patrick was spending so much time helping out on planning and zoning, or on the planning process, was that we had an extraordinary number of housing starts and a lot of activity here going on. So it was, you know, just based on last year, we need it. We need this extra person, so.
I will also mention too, and I'm going to draw a blank on the accounting terminology, but we had the accountant review that we have to change our accounting practices.
Yes.
For this year.
Yes.
Another thing that this.
I've got that, yeah, I
staff
know
will
all
be
about that. Yep.
Assisting with.
We'll leave that one lay.
So I do have a motion on the floor, second for that. Any further discussion? Nope. If not, I'll call in favor. All those in
Yay,
favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, letter C, approve replacement of pumps at lift station number 1. Not sure if this would be Mr. Chansky?
I can introduce it and then I'll hand it over to, actually, I'll just hand it over to Joe, and Joe, if you want to take
Perfect.
this one.
Sure. We have annual lift station inspections, check the motor for proper function, check seals, go through all of our lift stations. Typically it's in spring. This year we had pump number 2 on our main lift station. Basically the seals failed, sewage got into the motor. Does work. It's not broken at the moment, but it's a bad sign. Recommendation, either immediate rebuild or replacement. I was anticipating, because replacing the pumps next year, just based on wear on the mechanical portion of the pump that actually moves water, not the electrical motor portion. That's what I was basing on replacing them, just from wear and tear. This motor kind of steps up my plans, and then I show the 3 options in front of us: repair the current pump, that just replace the electrical portion. I think that waste of money, unless that's all you can afford. Number 2, buy 1 pump to replace our damaged pump. That could be done. Number 3, I think, is the best option. It's how I personally replace sewer pumps, because as they wear, one pump will pump, the other pump, and then the wear and tear on them keeps your pump time similar. It's just a way for us to diagnose if one pump's running twice as much, there's a problem. So they need to be very similar in age. And pump, talking about all that stuff, number 3, in my opinion, would be the best solution, especially when you're looking at 4 to 6 month lead time. I don't anticipate that getting better, and I certainly don't anticipate prices getting better on anything. So.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any questions of staff?
None.
No.
I will actually take a moment at this time and actually apologize to everybody who's here. I assume that nobody wanted to come forward and talking about these, so I apologize if I'm mistaken on that, since I did say that anybody who wants to speak on anything that is on the agenda. If you want to speak on this item, would anybody want to come forward? I know I made that offer. Okay. And I will step back on A and B here shortly. So hearing staff's recommendation here for the replacement, do I have a motion on the floor? For which option? That would be what I'm going to ask.
Second.
Motion on the floor for option number 3 with a second. Any further discussion?
Joe sent me the email when this popped up, and I did review that. The option, and the reason I would go with option 3 is that It actually gets both pumps replaced, and then we would take the existing pump one, which has no problems at all on it right now, and then rebuild that to like new condition, put that on the shelf, and we can keep that as a spare.
Backup, yeah.
And as a backup. If pump number 2 is not severely damaged with the motor, we can also do that. And so then we would have 2 spares that we'd have available. Lift station number 1 is the most critical lift station in the entire city.
Yep.
Everything that comes in funnels through lift station 1 and then goes to the waste treatment plant. So it is by far our most critical lift station. And we have had a problem in the past.
Yes.
Where it has backed up and caused problems. And we have done some design changes to lift station number 1 to mitigate that, so it shouldn't happen again. However, it's still, the pumps are the most critical part of that lift station, and which is why that having 2 new pumps in there and get the thing going and then have a workable spare sitting on the shelf, that if something happens, we could change it out in a weekend. So that's why I would recommend option number 3.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? None? All right, all those in favor with option number 3, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. At this time, I will take that pause. Did anybody want to speak on A or B? If so, raise your hand or approach the podium. All right. Oh, yep, I apologize, sir, that I did not call you ahead of time, but for A and B, you wanted to make a statement? If you want to approach a podium and, on B?
Maury Waller's 8871 Birch Lane. Welcome. It looks like, looking down the road a ways with an assistant, we need another office for assistant. So maybe we need another administrative building, in addition to the building, maybe? So I'm looking down the road, and the council here, you gotta look at that. Did our existing city administrator now, was he aware of the fact that we were going to look for an assistant when he was hired?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
Nobody had me, I would assume he was. Maury?
Yeah,
I would
okay.
certainly assume he was, and you can ask him.
Okay, but it seems like we had one city administrator's doing the whole job, now we gotta have an assistant to do the same job. But,
No, you're missing the whole point.
So we had discussions with the previous administrator that we know that there's a lack, there's more work to be done here. So
Okay.
it was actually going to be moved on earlier. However, after
Yeah.
Mr. Bosu put his resignation in, instead of this council deciding to approve the hire without the new administrator here, we felt that would be ill and that we'd want the new administrator here to have a say in the new assistant
yeah, I
administrator position.
understand that. But I guess if I was coming on the boat, I would wanna know whether or not they're gonna hire an assistant underneath me to, and I would have to think twice about that. He's gonna be the city administrator, so he should be the city administrator, but now you got an assistant. And, anyway, let's build a new building.
Maury,
Other office.
I'd like to address that. I think that's a little cloudy in your mind.
Yeah?
My testimony, as of way back to May, when I had the meeting with Mr. Russo,
Yeah.
he spent 30%, that was his number of time,
Yeah.
helping the planner,
Yeah.
okay?
But I have to interrupt you. Possibly, was a planner doing his job?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a
Well,
question. Question.
I'm going to qualify that.
Okay,
He did when he was here.
okay.
There were days he
Okay.
was not a full-time
Yep.
planner.
Okay.
Okay?
So you're
And he can
counsel.
answer for that himself.
Yeah.
But when he was here, he did the job. Ergo, why the administrator had to help with that position.
Okay.
His premise was and is, now he's hired an assistant administrator, which was budgeted way back in May, to help the administrator, because he can't handle all of that stuff. It's been proven, Maury,
Okay.
and you know me.
Well, we got a council to hire people, let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
And
appreciate that.
And again, I apologize that I didn't ask for public input at that point, so. All right.
Could I speak on that one as well? Can I?
I made the comment that
Sure.
if you're not going to speak at open forum, if you have something to speak, so yes, please come. I apologize that I didn't call at the time that the agenda item was on. Name and address, please.
Tim Olson, 31908 Blue Ridge Drive.
Thank you.
No planned comments here, just a couple of questions. It's not really what I'm here for, but it sparked some curiosity in my mind. With this assistant administrator position, what is the process going to be for that? Are we, as a city, going to spend money with a recruiting service as we did previously? Is that the plan?
Mr. Chansky, no, we're going to do that all in-house. Right.
Okay.
Yep, job description is going to be written in-house, we're going to advertise
And
in-house.
the group here can't see, what is the wage range for this position?
Grade 10, I don't know if.
I saw figures, and if I may respond to that, I think they were reasonable. And the money budgeted, sir, was to hire him. There was no search, and it's going to be done in-house. They advertise for a bit.
Who's they?
The city.
The city,
Okay,
yes, sir.
okay.
And
And
they
is
put
that
it
the way
out
it worked with the
in the
previous
trade
position as well?
journals, et cetera. Perhaps you can speak more eloquently to that. And they put it
I guess
out.
my question, and maybe I didn't phrase it correctly, if I'm not mistaken, there was someone contracted to seek applicants for, what's your name, sir?
David Chansky.
Mr. Chansky's position? Is that correct?
That is a correct statement.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so my question simply was, were we going to follow that same path for this position?
No.
The answer is no.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda, 7D. Joe, chip sealing?
Sure. It's all spelled out pretty much right there. Couple things did change slightly.
Joe,
That
do you have your mic on? Is it on? Okay.
and that I filled you in on the brief.
Yep.
The estimates, so that dollar amount is actually less. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was probably $5,000 or $6,000, and I'm not sure why the change was from the original county estimates. And that's still not a hard number. The projects would need to be done. As you're aware, petroleum products right now are volatile, and prices are tight for chip sealing are tied directly to petroleum products. So I think contractors are protecting themselves with not guaranteeing prices. But any questions?
Okay. Any questions of Joe regarding the chip sealing?
No.
None? All right. Without any questions of staff, I will ask if anybody from the public would like to ask any questions or address the council. All right. Seeing nobody. Do I have a motion in this regard?
So moved.
So
It's a good procedure. Has proved very, very, very profitable, helpful to the city.
So we have a motion on the floor to seek those bids for the seal coating and expense that. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Go ahead.
It's a race, Mr. Lilhigh. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 7E, Ashdown Home Occupation Interim Use Permit Appeal. Mr. Chansky?
Thank you. I'll start this off, and then if there's anything that Jerry would like to add, I'll hand it over to him. So the city has received letters of appeal regarding the planning commission's decision to grant an interim use permit for home occupation to operate an in-home daycare for up to 24 clients at Ashdown Forest School that's located at 6716 Nickel Road. The planning commission considered this application on April 12th. And they did vote unanimously to approve interim use permit application I-22-001 with the listed conditions. On Monday, April 25th, we received a letter of appeal from John and Christy Duff of 3067-2 Rice Creek Drive, requesting the council to review and overturn the planning commission's determination to approve this interim use permit application. There have been a number of individuals who have signed on to this appeal. They are Matt and Jessica Hockmeyer of 7073 Nickel Road, Josh and Kylie Marty of 7073 Nickel Road, John and Vicky Palmer of 30595 Nickelwood Circle, Tony and Becky Brown of 30667 Nickelwood Circle, Julie Jacobson of 30653 Rice Creek Drive, Sarah Lovejoy at 7036 Nickel Road, Joe and Melanie Doughty at 30718 Rice Creek Drive, Karen and Gary Mitchell at 6944 Nickel Road, Eileen Springer at 6817 Nickel Road, Mike and Sherry Monahan at 30682 Nickelwood Circle, and Dusty Oliver at 6798 Nickel Road. All of their signatures were provided to you in the packet. City Code Section 513.118, Paragraph 4, does state that it is the duty of the City Council to quote, initiate and or hear appeals from the actions of the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission, where the Planning Commission decision is final. In the case of interim use permits, the Planning Commission's decision is final. I would like to clarify that this is not intended to be a public hearing, but a appeal, and so you're hearing the case of the appellants, those who are the people who are named, I just named. They are the ones who have submitted this appeal. They are the ones that the council should recognize to speak on this. What we recommend is to first open up the testimony for the appellants listed to provide their testimony as to why they believe the council should consider repealing the Planning Commission's decision. After that, we'd encourage you to hear any testimony or rebuttal from the applicants who are here, that Rachel Hodge and Jacob Longley. And then after that, we can discuss that more, but then that'd be time for deliberation and a decision from the council. Jerry, is there anything you would like to add before the council opens up the hearing?
Not at this time. Okay. Any questions of staff at this time?
None.
Not at this time, no.
Okay. So as Mr. Chansky did elaborate, we will hear the appealants. I'm going to ask at this point if your name is on the list that you can approach. Anybody who is not on the list, I'll ask that for after. I will ask if you can limit it to 3 to 5 minutes, please. If you are going to duplicate anybody, you can certainly come up. I would just ask that you say, I second what so-and-so said about this, and keep it very brief, if you may. We have a lot of people here, a lot of people that would like to speak on this. So at this time, if you are on that list, please approach the podium, state your name and address just for the record, and state your case.
Hi, I'm John Duff, 30672 Rice Creek Drive. And I won't read the whole thing. I can't do that in 3 to 5 minutes anyways. I'll just summarize the most important points. We feel that the Planning Commission made an error in approving this permit application, not based on any subjective criteria, but based on the objective rules, the zoning regulation rules of our wooded residential neighborhood. And it's not just a couple of us, it's the vast majority of our neighborhood feels this way. I'll hit the highlights. An interim use permit can be granted to someone in a wooded residential zone for home occupation where all activities shall be clearly incidental to the use of the property for residential purposes. And the definition of incidental, is minor, casual, or subordinate. This is going to be a full-time business with 24 clients coming in, 4 outside non-resident employees, 2 yurts, animals and whatnot. This is a business they live in. This isn't a residence that they operate a side business out of. So we feel that regulation is violated. One of the most important ones they have violated, or would violate with this proposed expansion, is number of employees shall be limited by the interim use permit and shall be limited to family members living on premises only. It doesn't get any more black and white than that. It's clear cut in zoning regulations. You cannot have outside non-resident employees, and they want to have 4 of them come in to help with the additional kids. I think on that basis alone, this should be denied. Another one is conditional use permit. The use with conditions would not be injurious to the public health, safety, welfare, decency, order, comfort, convenience, appearance, or prosperity of the city. I ask you, if you had a next door neighbor who wanted to have a business where they would have 56 people coming and going from outside the community every single weekday, would you say that would be injurious to your safety, order, comfort, appearance of your neighborhood? I think any reasonable person would say yes, it would. That is excessive. This is a wooded residential neighborhood. It's not a commercial neighborhood. The conditional use will have vehicular approaches to the property which are so designed as not to create traffic congestion or an interference with traffic on surrounding public thoroughfares, and adequate measures have been taken to provide sufficient off-street parking and loading space to serve the proposed use. None of this has been done. Even with the school as it is today, there is traffic backups on Nickel Road, the public road, off their driveway during the pickup and drop-off times, and they want to double the amount of traffic coming. Nothing has been designed to avoid traffic congestion, and nothing really can be on Nickel Road. I mean, there's really no room to do anything else there. Finally, we want to emphasize that this is not a personal thing. We have nothing but respect for the owners of the daycare. They are good people. They've got very good intentions. But that is true, but it is also true that what they propose would violate our zoning regulations. And our zoning regulations are not zoning suggestions. They must be followed for obvious reasons. I mean, that's the whole point of having them, right? If we can just ignore them just because it's a good cause, then they're not worth the paper they're printed on. So it really doesn't matter any emotional appeals from anybody like the parents or anything like that. I fully respect everything they said during the planning commission meeting, but that's really beside the point. They're violating our zoning regulations. So we feel that this permit must be denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on that list wish to come forward? Again, name and address, please.
Sherry Monahan, 30682 Nickelwood Circle. I would like to second that. I feel strongly the same way. I think it's a wonderful program, but the amount of influence and traffic and everything in the neighborhood would be just a little bit too extreme. So.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Vicki Palmer, 30595 Nickelwood Circle. I'd like to second what John Duff has said. And in addition, maybe bring up the fact that they're in violation of some of the ordinance rules right now with the number of kids that are there and extra workers. So, and again, we all supporting kids, but it is a residential area. So ask you to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Vicki. Next. Anybody else on the list for appeals? We're all Minnesota nice. We don't want to rush up.
Joe Doty, 30718 Rice Creek Drive. John Duff did cover most all of the points I think are pretty valid. I felt that the Planning and Zoning Commission really didn't listen to our concerns that day. There were quite a number of folks here that day as well, as probably as many as there are here tonight in our group. It was rather disappointing. And I did some follow-up with the planning gentleman, Jerry, and We had some conversations about how this decision was made, and I feel that it was really not made in a proper form. I'm going to speak at the next planning and zoning meeting as well as to how this came about. I think that it was, the way it was handled did not do justice to the people of this community. There were a lot of concerns addressed, and if you go back and watch the tape from the video of the meeting, really none of those concerns were addressed or discussed in any way, shape, or form. We were basically shunned and shut out, sent out the door with an immediate no. There was an immediate rush to an approval, and I think if we could have had some discussion, maybe from the council, to learn why they wanted to go with the way they did, maybe gone down the list of findings of fact that Jerry put together for them, we might have had a little better understanding of why the decision was made, but there was none of that given to us. And we kind of felt slighted. So that's, of course, why we're here. On top of the fact that, I, again, with the rest of the neighbors, don't feel this really belongs in our neighborhood at an increased level. They've been running a business there now. It seems to be acceptable. I mean, it falls within, mostly falls within the what are residential guidelines. But to double it is just going to be very, very extreme for our neighborhood. I mean, our roads are just not set up for it. There's a lot of walking traffic on that road. We've got the wetland on the Pequot Lake side of that road that gets a lot of people walking dogs and families walking, and it's just not necessary for our neighborhood to have that kind of traffic. So I second all of what John Duff said, and I would strongly urge you to reconsider the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. You're next, ma'am.
Sorry.
You stood up before, that's all right.
Tony Brown, 30667 Nickelwood Circle. And I just want to say that I appreciate the work that was done in detailing all the reasons that we have objections to it and how it fits into the laws of the city. And while I have no animosity towards them and their business, and I appreciate what they're doing, again, I just second the earlier comments about it.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am?
I'm Sarah Lovejoy, 7036 Nickel Road, and I don't have anything to add. I just want to let you know that I second the information that's already been given. I support what they've said, so thank you.
I'm Jessica Hockmeyer, 7073 Nickel Road. I just want to second all of Mr. Duff's points that he had made in regards to this.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the list that would like to speak forward on this?
Gary Mitchell, 6944 Nickel Road. A couple of things have come to my mind. I did go visit, we have another school in Pequot. It's called Little Sprouts. It opened about 1.5 years ago. So I went over there, kind of see how that was run. They have a chain link fence, keep the kids in, protect them. A bunch of little guys, they have different classes, they have them separated. The kids that were in the room, I asked them about, do you like it here? Absolutely. Do you like the food? Absolutely. We had a lot of people come up here, none of them, or maybe one from Breezy Point. Everybody else was from other areas, from Walker. There are other schools. There are that take good care of the children. Now, Jake and Rachel are good people, and I think the way it's set up now with the 12 or 14 maximum has worked okay. But to double that, one, has the sewer system been approved for that many kids? Number two, has the fire chief inspected the property? Number three, how close are those kids to watch? We have a bear in the neighborhood. He's torn down our bird feeder. He's got into the garbage. Now, people say a bear. I checked. Minnesota had 8 human cases where bears have attacked humans in this state since 1987. Kids run around, they yell, they see a bear, they start running. Bears like to chase things that run. So that's another consideration. We're all taxpayers. We pay taxes here. These people that come from all over the country don't. It's very upsetting. I was at the first meeting with the Planning Commission, a gentleman in our neighborhood who's a very good man, but he told the Planning Commission, I think I can represent the neighborhood, saying that they are in favor of this. He's absolutely, totally, completely wrong. You can tell by all the names on the list. So there's a lot to consider. And as everybody else said, I think the Planning Commission did a lousy job. Their minds were made up when they came here, and I think the City Council needs to look into that, and we're hoping that you'll rescind this additional permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Councilmember Maroney.
Yes.
We need to make our pause just for the
We do need to make a pause. Our equipment does have an hour time limit, so I'm just going to ask for a 2-minute recess. Just stay where we're at. It'll be a 2-minute recess here momentarily.